mentioned, I'm Richard Slater. I fulfill a student recruitment role at Loughborough University, which is kind of misleading because it is recruitment, but as well, it's just chats to students maybe pre-16 or students that aren't interested in Loughborough, just trying to give them general information about university and help them with their choices, after school. So what we're going to be doing today is running through some general kind of introductions to STEM jobs, STEM careers in the UK, very kind of generalized. And then we're going to move, the second half is going to be moving to the specific courses that we have at Loughborough in the STEM subjects. So that's kind of roughly how how today's going to go. If you've got any questions, by all means, you can put them in the chat as we go or save them through to the end. That's fine. And then I know some questions got sent through to me previously via email that I can go through at the end. I'm not sure who sent them in, but some questions around chemical engineering and degree apprenticeships, I think, as well. So we can get to those at the end. So what I'm just going to do now is share my screen. Sorry, I shared the screen, not the window. I think, here we go. Okay, and then if I go, could I just have I can't see anyone now, so could I just have a quick confirmation if everyone can see
That's perfect. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
That's great.
And is it just the slides you can see, not my notes as well? Because
yes,
I don't want to.
Just the slides.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Okay, so as mentioned, we're going to be covering careers in STEM and engineering. Obviously, STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Roots into them in terms of jobs and careers in the UK, and then moving on to subjects, the specific subjects we offer at Loughborough. So first off, a lot of you might be thinking, why would you want to study a STEM subject? There's three main things. The first one is to develop your skills. So there's lots and lots of transferable skills that go into the different STEM subjects, and these can be applied in a variety of different ways, not just specifically to the subject you may be studying, but further wide-reaching jobs that maybe even you wouldn't associate with, a maths or a chemistry course. Those transferable skills are really, really key, and there's really valuable when you get out into the job market applying for vacancies, so they can really stand you in good stead. The second reason is there's a real high demand for STEM graduates at the moment, particularly coming out of the pandemic. I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but we have a lot of job vacancies in the UK at the moment, and a big proportion of those are for jobs in the STEM fields. Because of that, wages are rising. We all know the cost of living is rising, but wages are rising to try and entice people into those vacancies. And then for the STEM subjects, that they are rising at a higher than normal rate. The final point that you might want to consider as to why you might want to do a STEM subject is you're changing the physical world around you, hopefully for positive reasons. Hopefully, you're making meaningful differences in people's lives, but you are literally changing the world in terms of maybe a new product or a new process for manufacturing or engineering, sustainability reasons as well. So there's a myriad of reasons as to why you might want to get into it, but in terms of meaningful change in your immediate environment, that's a big one that a lot of students express as to why they want to get into the STEM subjects. So we're going to touch on a little bit more of those three sections a bit more deeply now. So turning to the skills, a lot of the skills, the transferable ones that I previously mentioned, a lot of that kind of you can see there with those some examples there of the bullet points on the slide. So being able to solve problems, lateral thinking, being able to assess a problem and then create a solution is very, very key and very common in the STEM subjects. Being creative, being analytical, working with other people. You don't do things in isolation. You're always part of a big team. Knowing what problem you're solving and how that relates to the bigger goal that you know your team, your company, even maybe a national project is really, really key. Being curious about the world around you, as I say, like making that meaningful change, trying to solve a particular problem, or maybe you have a new idea for a product or a process, or something like that. Definitely resilience, being able to cope with adversity. You might not get the solution the first go around, so it's very important to be resilient and to stay the course. And then finally, adaptable in terms of STEM graduates need to be adaptable, because the technology that they employ is constantly changing. So it's not necessarily the biggest thing to become an expert on a particular piece of particular machine or a particular piece of technology, because it ultimately will get replaced, it will get updated. So it's not about zeroing in on the specifics, it's about learning the skills that mean that you can adapt to new technologies as and when they come out. And at Loughborough, we definitely focus on developing those skills, the diverse kind of skill set, not just those technical skills, throughout your degree as well. Lastly, the last point what I want to touch on is employability. So definitely the skills that I've mentioned here and on the slide that you can see are very, very valuable for employers when you complete your degree, and when you're looking for jobs and applying for positions. The skills that you get through a STEM degree can definitely open a lot of doors, not only within the STEM fields but in other fields as well. And you're definitely not restricted to your individual subjects, physics, chemistry, maths, engineering, whatever it may be. There's lots and lots of roles outside of STEM that you can still be an ideal candidate for, because of the skills that you've acquired during your education. So pretty clear at this slide, the demand for STEM graduates is growing. It's very, very high at the moment. Because of that, it's pushing wages up. So you can see there, 43% of STEM vacancies exist due to a shortage of applicants. So it's not a new role being created. It's not a new piece of technology or machinery that requires someone to work it. It's quite simply that there aren't any people to do those jobs. So demand is very, very high, and that can mean that you get a very high standard of living, because the wages reflect that need to fulfill those vacancies. And definitely kind of going on into the future, and looking in terms of like long term as well, there are definitely more and more job opportunities that are going to become available for STEM graduates, given the rapid rate at which the science and the technology is developing, and that's just kind of going to go on and on into the future. EDF Energy, in fact, projected that between 2016 and 2023, STEM related jobs will grow at a rate of more than double of any other occupation in the sector in the UK. So the entirety of all jobs in the UK, the STEM vacancies are going to grow at more than double. And in fact, they have done. That prediction was made pre-2016, but that has come to fruition as we've seen that play out. So it's a very good kind of future proofing subject to get into. COVID, especially over the last couple of years, has really highlighted the need for new scientists, new technicians, and then obviously that has resulted in those new vacancies and those new positions being sought after. So the last point here, in terms of the three that we've covered, the meaningful change in the world around you. So scientists, mathematicians, engineers are at the heart of changing our world. Again, I don't want to harp on about it, but the COVID vaccine, we're all I think very happy to leave COVID behind us and move on with our lives. But the rate at which the vaccine was developed and then distributed around the world, and the massive change that has, helped us get out of, lockdowns and all that kind of thing. All of that came about because of scientists working at, record paces, developing those vaccines. And, there's different types of vaccines, as we know, that work in a different way of the body. So, that wouldn't have been possible without STEM graduates. And you can just see right there, that one example has changed the world massively in only, the last kind of couple of years. In terms of that kind of cutting edge research that we do at Loughborough, I've got some specific examples here. So things like in our physics department, we are currently developing revolutionary brain imaging technology. In our aeronautical engineering department, we are working on powertrain solutions to provide better energy efficiency in a multitude of different kinds of engines. Chemical engineering at Loughborough, we're working on overcoming scaling up challenges for cell-based therapies, so stem cells, gene therapies, that kind of thing. And then I'll give you one more example for science and geoscience at Loughborough. We're developing real-time property level flood forecasting to provide world-leading emergency planning systems with obviously with climate change. Extreme adverse weather conditions are only going to increase. Well, that's the prediction. So we're working on a world-leading emergency planning system to try and save lives and save property as we go forward. So moving on now, at school, when you're doing STEM subjects, you don't really get that much choice. You're kind of doing your kind of classic ones, your three sciences: physics, chemistry, and biology. Maybe you've got an engineering BTEC or A level that you can do, but you can see there just some real small examples of some of the jobs and degrees that you can do at university. When you get to higher education, the choice absolutely explodes. So there is over 140 higher education institutions around the UK offering over 1,800 engineering degrees. And these are just some examples there. So lots and lots of choice, and within, so for example, take chemistry. Within that you could have chemical engineer, chemistry just by itself, biochemist, lots and lots of extra opportunities become available at higher education level. So that's why it's really, really important that you do your research, you have a good idea of what you're interested in, go on the UCAS website and look at all of the different options that are available, and then start to filter them down to maybe have a long list of, maybe 10 to 15. And then from there, you can filter it further to end up with your final 5 when you apply through UCAS. But a huge number of STEM degrees are available in the UK. Am I okay to carry on? I've heard a few beeps come through. I can't actually see Teams at the moment because I'm sharing the presentation.
No, that's absolutely fine, Richard. Please continue. That's grand. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, no problem at all. Okay, so in terms of engineering specifically, one of the STEM subjects, it's easy to get carried away and kind of talk about all of these different things and these amazing products and future technology, like all the great stuff SpaceX are doing with their rockets, maglev trains, all these kinds of crazy technologies. But it's important to kind of take a step back and just ask a real simple question in terms of what actually is engineering. What does it entail? And we've got a really good example, succinct example of an answer to that question that you can see. And engineering is essentially the application of scientific knowledge and using that to then solve real world problems. So it's not necessarily, you can kind of think about it, this is a bit oversimplified, but scientists do the research and kind of figure out, in labs, do experiments to kind of figure out cutting edge technologies. Engineers then take that discovery and apply it to real world situations to solve problems that we may have. So, we've got a couple of pictures there that you can see of the kind of engineers that we have at Loughborough and the situations that they get put in. So on the left there, a couple of students in our chemical engineering plant. In the middle, we've got an advanced virtual reality research centre that you can see a couple of students working on there. And then just pre-COVID, I think that was 2019 that was taken, one of our design students, Sam Rogers, basically developed a jetpack as part of his degree. Tested it out. That was at an event that we hold every year at Loughborough called the Degree Show. So everybody within the creative arts and design department get to showcase the projects that they're working on. Sam showcased and demonstrated his flight suit. I think that was the official term. Yeah, flight suit. I kind of think of it as a jetpack, but it doesn't go on your back. It's the propulsion is in his hands, as you can see there. And then he went on to set several land speed records with that. And all of that technology was developed at Loughborough and built at Loughborough as well. So some really cool things that students can get involved with. Moving on into why, we've talked about what engineering is, now moving on to why, students might want to get into it, why we need engineers as a society. For those of you kind of still on the fence, we've already mentioned this, but it really is worth emphasizing and kind of pointing out those really sought after transferable skills that engineers develop. The opportunity to be in the forefront of cutting edge developments and getting involved in so many everyday things that we use, looking at the products themselves, how they're made, if we can do it more efficiently, more sustainably. There's high demand, as I previously mentioned, going into the foreseeable future. More than 5.5 million people in the engineering sector. There's 5.5 million people in the engineering sector as of 2020. And as that graphic said previously, we still don't have enough. There's still loads and loads of vacancies out there for engineers. So that demand is only going to increase. Especially in some really kind of cutting edge new sectors that we maybe haven't had before. So one of those is actually the space sector in the UK. In America, they've had a bit of an explosion of private companies, setting up manned space flights, but also drones, like sending up satellites. Starlink is an example, Blue Origin, Dynotech, offering designs for the Artemis moon landing mission coming up in the next few years. So, and that is starting to kind of spill over into the UK as well. So the UK government estimates that we're going to need 20,000 additional engineers to deliver on those projects. There's high earning potential for engineers. The average earning is the average engineer is the 6th highest average salary for women, and it's the 5th highest for men. So again, really, really good in terms of wages and obviously the quality of life and job security that kind of comes with that. Just kind of for a bit of an example, chartered engineers earn in excess of £60,000 a year. You don't become a chartered engineer automatically when you graduate. You need to, firstly, you need to make sure that the degree that you complete, whichever university you're at, is accredited. And then secondly, you need to do some additional professional assessments and get additional professional experience when you're in your job. But eventually, as I say, you can become a chartered engineer, and that again increases your earnings potential. So now we're going to take a little bit, kind of drill down a bit more to Loughborough specifically, look at the courses that we've got and look at our history in the engineering sector. So Originally, when we opened in 1909, we purely did, we were what's known as a technical college. And what that means kind of in normal layman's terms is that we purely did engineering degrees. So courses in aeronautics, automotive, mechanical engineering, those kinds of things. So we've got a real long history in terms of engineering. We are currently one of the largest engineering universities in the UK. We've got a lot of different courses available. We have 5 departments: aeronautics, automotive, mechanical, electrical, and manufacturing engineering. And then within those departments, we have additional courses as well. So I would estimate, in terms of undergraduate courses, I don't know the exact number, but I would think it's maybe 10 to 15 separate engineering degrees that are on offer at Loughborough. And in terms of our engineering research, all of it is considered world leading or internationally excellent, and that's coming from the Research Excellence Framework, which was completed in 2021. Moving on to the individual departments now. Aeronautical, automotive, chemical and materials engineering. These are kind of you can see on the screen there, these are very common routes to get into engineering, very common degrees that STEM students take, and then that sets them up for a further degree, sets them up to get a job in those sectors when they leave university. So aeronautical and automotive is the design of aircraft, aerospace and vehicle systems. Bioengineering that we have at Loughborough is engineering applications for biology and medicine. Things like new drugs possibly, or new surgery techniques, new tools to make those things easier, diagnostic machines like MRIs, that kind of thing. Chemical engineering is essentially converting raw materials that we have on the planet and then turning them into useful products for society. Traditionally, that meant a lot of chemical engineers were involved in the fuel sector. So, for example, making plastic from oil, refining oil into all the different kinds of fuels that we use. So everything from kerosene to diesel to petrol. More recently, over the last few decades, more students have started to realize that there's actually loads of other sectors as well in terms of chemical engineering that they can get into. So the food industry, things like preservatives, adding flavors, some really cool experimental stuff in the food industry, paint, pharmaceuticals as well. So lots and lots of options in terms of future career paths with chemical engineering. And then materials is the application of design materials for a wide range of uses. So coming up with new building materials, maybe new processes, for example, 3D printing, all of those kinds of things, how best to make use of materials and apply them to, solutions that we need to, providing solutions for problems that we need to solve in the real world. So then moving on to the next department, architecture, building and civil engineering. So civil engineering refers to large construction projects, tackling some challenges presented by the climate, things like land use, overcrowding, that sort of thing. A good example of that would be city design. A city like New York, in terms of how they've solved their population, I wouldn't say problem, but as more and more people live there, obviously Manhattan is a very, New York encompasses more than Manhattan, but Manhattan is an island. Obviously, you've only got a certain amount of space. How they've solved that problem if they've built up. So there's lots and lots of tall buildings in New York. In Los Angeles, they've built out. So there's a few skyscrapers in Los Angeles, but nothing compared to New York. They've kind of chosen transportation to link them up, mainly the car, but as well public transportation, and that city is sprawled kind of outwards instead of going up. So yeah, that's a good example of how civil engineers might be employed to solve those sort of problems. Architectural engineering focuses on the integration of structural engineering, architecture and building energy performance. Construction engineering management is multidisciplinary and is a building course that's focused on the management of construction and engineering projects. Commercial management and quantity surveying specialises in the contractual and financial aspects of managing construction. Architecture is helps to nurture creative design and helps students to become leaders and flourish in taking on new, being bold enough to try out new architectural practice and designs. And then finally, the last course we have at Loughborough in this department is urban planning. And that is the development of core planning skills to mediate competing demands. So lastly, the last department, STEM department that we have at Loughborough is called the Wolfson department. It's the School of Mechanical, Electrical and Manufacturing Engineering. Mechanical engineering is concerned with motions of all types, tools, flows, mechanisms and machines. It could be engine related, it could be aerodynamic related. But yeah, that's kind of some of the main things that it's concerned with. Manufacturing engineering finds efficient and environmentally conscious ways to change raw goods into manufactured items. Robotics, mechatronics and control engineering is focused on building autonomous and robotic systems, and that can be everything from real big heavy duty machines like robotic arms and cranes, diggers, that kind of thing, all the way to self-driving cars and drones as well. So really cool, interesting stuff happening within that course. Next we've got electric and electronic engineering. There is a difference, but please don't ask me what the difference is because I really don't know it. I'm not an engineer. Essentially though, what that course focuses on is power generation and supply. So generating the power from power stations, renewable energy, the different ways that can be done, and then distributing it across society when we need it. So there's obviously 2-3 in the morning, there's not a very high demand for energy. So this is a problem that needs solving, especially with renewables, is how are we going to store that energy? Solar energy and wind energy generally is the most abundant for all countries around the world. But if it's late at night and the sun isn't out, how are we going to store the energy that we collected in the day to then flick on a light or a machine in the evening? Lastly, product design engineering at Loughborough is kind of like a blending of different design principles. So things like ergonomics, engineering, science and technology to create not only new products, but new user experiences as well. So how we use and how we interact with different products. So moving on to the accreditation, I kind of mentioned this a little bit previously in terms of chartership, but degree accreditation is essentially a professional recognition of an engineering degree program and acts as an assurance to students, parents and employers that the high standards set by the engineering profession are adhered to. It's kind of like a bit of an insurance policy, really. It's so students know that what they are learning is agreed to and kind of backed by the professional sector out in the job market, and as well employers know that the students with they look over the degrees that universities offer, and then they know that those topics that are covered when they kind of employ those graduates, they know that they've learned the right things, they're going to be up to speed, and they're going to be capable of doing the jobs that they need to be done. So here are a few of the institutions that accredit the courses at Loughborough. I'm not going to go through all of them. You can see them there. Some of them relate to different degrees that I've mentioned. So it's not like one of those professional bodies accredits all of our courses. It's, obviously specific to the, what they're involved with. So for example, the Engineering Council, they accredit a lot of our engineering degrees. Then they're not going to accredit things like the architectural engineering, for example. That's maybe the I forget which one. It might be the Royal Academy of Engineering actually that accredits that one. But in terms of the specifics, you don't really kind of need to get bogged down with specifically what Loughborough does and what courses we have that are accredited. The main takeaway here is to make sure that whatever course you're thinking about applying for, if it's in the STEM fields, you need to make sure that it is accredited by professional bodies, because what you don't want to happen is you go through your 3 years of uni, maybe even 4 years if you're doing a master's course, you graduate, you get a great mark, and then you start applying for jobs and they say, oh, well, your degree, we can't offer you a position because your degree is not accredited by this professional body. So you need to make sure you do your research, and you need to make sure that the courses that you're applying for are accredited by the appropriate professional bodies. Yeah, that's the main takeaway from that slide. So moving on to entry requirements, obviously this is kind of specific, obviously, to all of the courses we have at Loughborough. Again, for other institutions you may be thinking about, that's fine. No problem at all. You need to kind of make that decision by yourself, but just make sure that you know what those entry requirements are. At Loughborough, typically we have 2 A's and a B at A level as our typical offer for most of our engineering degrees that we have. Some of our degrees as well require specific subjects. We do accept lots of other qualifications as well, I should mention. So things like BTECs, Cambridge Technicals, International Baccalaureates, T levels as well in some instances. We do accept lots and lots of different qualifications. It's just that typically most people will be doing A levels. In terms of the equivalency rates for those other qualifications, we'll get to those in a moment. As well though, sorry, that point there in the middle, subjects. So for example, at Loughborough, if you're applying for a mechanical engineering course, you have to be doing maths and physics in whatever qualifications it is that you're doing. So, and that is very, very common across other universities as well. So again, just make sure that you understand, kind of like read the small print, know what the qualifications are, what the threshold is, and know if you need to be doing any particular subject, because you don't want to find out later and have wasted a slot on your UCAS application when you for a university that's not relevant. They were never going to give you an offer because you weren't doing the right subjects. Or for example, the last point there, GCSE grades are also important. So you need to make sure that if there are any GCSE requirements, and then secondly that you make them, because again, you don't want to waste a slot on your UCAS application. You get 5 slots in total, and you want to give yourself the best chance of receiving 5 different offers. And that can just be a kind of small, silly thing that maybe students don't understand, that GCSEs do matter in some cases as well. So just kind of, ticking that off and making sure you're giving yourself the best possible chance. So moving over to the entry requirements. This is just one example from one of our courses. This is for bioengineering. But this, if after this session, you're maybe thinking about doing some research about the courses at Loughborough, when you go onto our website, every course has its own web page detailing lots and lots of information, but it has a section, a table that you can see there with the entry requirements. And I'm just going to take you through this one example for bioengineering, just to kind of let you know what's being said here, and just how to read it, just to familiarize yourself. So typical A-level offer, you can see there. So if you're doing A-levels, we're looking for 2 A's and a B, including definitely maths you need to have, or one of the other sciences listed there. So chemistry, biology, physics. You don't have to be doing all of them. I say just maths and then one of the one. If you're doing an international baccalaureate, we are asking for the equivalent would be a 35, and that breaks down as a 665 for your higher level. Same thing again, we need maths, and then one of either biology, chemistry, or physics. The typical BTEC offer, you can see that again, these are kind of all the same level, it's just the equivalencies for the different qualifications. For the BTEC, you're looking at a level 3 national extended diploma at distinction, distinction, distinction. And then you can see there's some further permutations, calculus to solve engineering problems, further engineering. There's some of the module examples that they suggest. And then again, maths crops up again. So definitely, for most STEM subjects, maths and at least one science will be pretty key. You'll need to make sure you're doing those after your GCSEs. We also require a GCSE English language grade 4 for the bioengineering course at Loughborough. So again, just make sure that you can tick that off. And then there's just a link there for our contextual offers that we do have at Loughborough, but they're kind of worked out on an individual basis. So that's just a link there to an additional website. But that's how to read the entry requirements table on our website. You don't have to, typically what I've seen a lot of students come, their question is they're doing A levels, but they're not doing any of these other qualifications like IBs or BTECs. Is that okay? The answer is yes. We don't expect everyone to be doing all of these qualifications. It's one or the other. So it's either the A level offer or the IB offer or the BTEC offer. So one last thing to say about the placements at the courses at Loughborough is that we offer an industrial placement year with every single one of our courses as an option. You don't have to do it, but the option is there. We place a real high emphasis on placement years at Loughborough, which is why we give all students the option of doing one. The reason for that is that essentially you can see there's a stat 15% more engineering students on placement that we have with any other university. But the reason that we do that is that the stats bear out that the students that go on placement years, they graduate with better grades and they get better jobs when they go into employment, when they leave university. It's a really, really valuable way of putting into practice what you're learning in the classroom. So I know one of the questions that came up that I received previously was about degree apprenticeships. One of the plus points of degree apprenticeships is that you get that workplace experience alongside your your learning, but you can get that with degrees as well. So don't think that if you do a degree at a university, it's only classroom learning. That's not the case. You can do a full year. Well, it has to be at least 45 weeks. That's how the government classes it. So at least 45 weeks of professional level work experience. Generally, how that will work is you will apply for a fixed term contract with a company. So it's only going to last, that contract will last for essentially a year. You'll go off and work for them in your third year. So you do your first 2 years studying at university, wherever you choose to go, going to lectures, seminars, doing your experiments, in the labs, that kind of thing. Then on the third year, you'll go off and work for a company during your placement year. Lots and lots of options for that in terms of both the companies, but as well the location. You can choose to do that in the UK or abroad, and we have lots and lots of staff within the department that can help students apply for that. We do things like CV workshops and mock interviews, all of that kind of thing to get you ready. And then after that year, you would come back and finish your degree in your final year, and then you will graduate after that. So that's kind of how it breaks down at Loughborough. That graphic you can see there, year 1, year 2 placement, and then year 3, that will be common across all of the universities. That is typically how it's done. But if you're interested in a placement year, again, make sure that you know that your university that you're applying for offers one, because when you apply through UCAS, there is a separate code for the same course with or without a placement year. So if you just put the code for bioengineering at Loughborough, but you actually want to do one with a placement year, just bear in mind they've got separate codes, and you're applying for specifically a course with or without a placement. So just bear that in mind. That's kind of brought us to the end of the presentation. Hopefully that was really, really useful. I'm more than happy to open this up for questions, but before we go into any that have been put in the chat, I could go through the ones I received previously. If you'd like to, we can do that. Sure. Okay then. So the two, I'm not actually sure the exact wording of them now, but I think one of them that came through was if I would still recommend a degree in the light of the fact that you can now do a degree apprenticeship. What are the pros and cons of, the two different kind of paths, if you like. So in terms of the degree apprenticeship, we do offer them at Loughborough, not extremely commonly. Not in most of what we offer is undergraduate degrees, but we do have them in a few areas. Some of the pros of a degree apprenticeship is that you get, as I mentioned, that real life experience working alongside your academic learning. The degree is fully paid for, so there's no cost for you. And as well, you get paid a salary, just like a normal employee. So that, they're kind of the main plus points. In terms of some of the negatives, not necessarily negatives, but some of the things that you may not get with other opportunities like the degree route. Some of the cons of a degree apprenticeship include you obviously need to balance your working and your study time. So that can be quite difficult going straight from school, having everything mapped out for you, to basically having to kind of plan that yourself. Another possible con of degree apprenticeships is that you don't qualify for any student loans whatsoever. So while your degree is paid for, your tuition fees will be paid for by the company. You can't apply for any maintenance loans to help with your day-to-day costs, your cost of living for things like accommodation, food, travel, all that kind of stuff. And bear in mind that the wages for apprentices are quite low compared to what they would be for somebody who is a fully qualified, they've got their degree. So just bear in mind that if you did go to the degree apprenticeship route, your wage would be quite low for definitely those first 2 or 3 years, and you wouldn't be able to apply for any student loans to top up the cost of your living expenses. Another possible con is that you wouldn't get the traditional kind of university experience doing a degree apprenticeship. You kind of go straight from school into work, which is like 9 to 5, which is great for some people. There's no right, there's no wrong. It's just personal preference. But just bear in mind, you won't be kind of getting that university experience of, moving away from home, going into a new kind of friend group, maybe doing a bit of travel, that kind of, it's not going to be the experience that you have. And then the last con, I would say, of a degree apprenticeship would be that apprentices have a narrower field of expertise, so that they do get qualified, but because they're doing a lot of it alongside a specific job at a specific company, they become extremely well prepared for that particular job, and not necessarily they wouldn't have as much awareness or as much knowledge of maybe another job that is closely related in the sector, that you would get at university. You'd be made aware of that, But with the degree apprenticeship, you maybe wouldn't have that awareness, because, as I say, it would be very, very specific, because you would actually be doing one job for one company. So yeah, again, it's kind of related to the university experience there, in that your kind of opportunities would be narrower doing an apprenticeship. And then I got kind of 3 questions come through on the chemical engineering front. So the first one was kind of like typical routes into chemical engineering. How do you get to become a chemical engineer? First thing to say is that a degree is absolutely essential. You have to get a degree to become a chemical engineer. So obviously you could do that through the kind of classic route of university. You could do it through the degree apprenticeship, but however you get there, you need to make sure that you get your degree and that it is accredited by the Institution of Chemical Engineers. In terms of degree subjects, you could obviously just pick chemical engineering and just kind of stick to that, but as well, kind of if you maybe want to do something a different subject, but then you could still go into chemical engineering at a later date. Typical subjects include applied chemistry, biochemical processes or engineering, biomedical engineering, just chemistry on its own. You could go into chemical engineering after that, environmental engineering, nuclear engineering, and then polymer science and technology as well. In terms of jobs, what a chemical engineer actually does, the types of jobs. Chemical engineers develop, as we kind of mentioned, raw materials and turn them into useful products in sectors such as petrochemicals, medicine, and plastics. Other ones as well, but they're some of the main ones. You'll focus on the process of changing the chemical, biochemical, and physical state of substances and turning it into something else. An example I said earlier, making plastic from oil, but as well things like, for example, in the food sector, so turning coffee beans into instant coffee. That is a chemical process that turns that bean into something that dissolves instantly in water. That's a chemical process. So, another application there in a different sector. You'll need to chemical engineers need to understand how to alter those raw materials, change them into the products that we need in society, while taking into consideration, health and safety issues, as well as cost and sustainability issues as well. And then you can work in a variety of industries, including energy, food and drink, oil and gas, pharmaceuticals, plastics, toiletries, water treatment as well. And then finally, someone asked about how would they best go about getting some work experience in the chemical engineering sector. But this can kind of be applied to any work experience that students may be looking for. The first thing I would say is try to reach out and contact a local employer, either on the phone, or even better would be with a CV and cover letter. Send it out to some local companies, try and get a response from them, say that you're looking for work experience and you'd be interested to hear about any opportunities they have. Another thing you could do is volunteer for local charities. This probably won't be in the specific sector that you're looking for. Charity work, they won't, realistically talking, you're not going to get any you're not going to be volunteering for a local charity in the chemical engineering sector. Realistically, it's just not going to happen. But that doesn't mean that it's still not valuable, because whatever sector you're interested in, engineering, maths, science, whatever it is, by volunteering for a local charity, you can develop those transferable skills again. That's the key thing, things like organization, communication, leadership, lateral thinking, taking the initiative, all of those kinds of things you can get through volunteering for local charities. And more importantly, you can evidence it as well. When you're applying for, degrees through universities, when you do your personal statement through UCAS, or whether it's a degree apprenticeship or just an apprenticeship straight, just straight applying for companies, it's not enough to just say that you're a good communicator or you're very organized. You need to back it up with evidence. And if you've done some volunteering at a local charity, that will give you that experience that you can draw from. You can prove that you have those skills, and then that you will be able to use those skills in the specific application that, you know, that job or that degree requires. The next thing I would say is placement years at universities. As I said, that's probably one of the best ways. It's a whole year. You work, you don't mix your study and your work during that year. You're just working all the time. You can do it for local companies. You can do it for big multinational companies. You can do it abroad if you want to. That's totally fine. So a whole host of opportunities opens up to you if you know, choose to do a placement year at university. And obviously, you know, you get paid for that work as well. So that's good for you, and, you know, it's good for the employers as well. And another thing I would mention in terms of the placement years, why they're so good, is what you will find is the students that get on the good graduate schemes, the good graduate jobs when they leave university, it's very, very common that they made those initial introductions and those networked with those people during their placement year. So it's very, very common that someone will go off and work for a company for their placement year. They'll kind of keep their foot in the door, maybe send the odd email to their line manager or something throughout the next year, just, you know, kind of catching up. And then when they've graduated and they're applying for graduate positions, they already know, you know, possibly if they apply for the same company, you know, they've already got contacts there. The people working at that company, they have some experience of the applicant, you know, they already know that they're capable of doing the job. Hopefully they made a good impression during that year on a personal level. So that's very, very common as well, as another reason as to why placement years can really set you up for that, you know, workplace experience and then into getting a job, you know, later in life. Internships are another you know, option for, you know, students out there wanting to get work experience. A lot of the time they use the internships and placements are kind of used interchangeably. They're not actually the same. Internships are typically taken over a set period of time, less than a year. So maybe over a summer period or a certain fixed term after somebody graduates. You know, you go off and work for a company in the same way, and you gain experience in a particular field. The difference is with a placement year, students are, if they're at university and they're doing a placement year, they're not just going out and getting that work experience, they're also completing a module in their degree. So they receive a academic credit for that placement year. They have to write a report on it. And, you know, it's all part of that degree process. So that's kind of the main difference there. And yeah, that's kind of the questions that I got initially. So I'll just check the chat and see if anything's come in.
Thank you, Richard. I haven't seen anything in the chat at the moment, but students, if you are interested in asking Richard any questions, please do put them in the chat right now. Or indeed, if Richard is happy with that, we can send those on to you afterwards if students would rather ask later.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a lot of information to take in. I imagine a lot of students will be, you know, they'll think of something later on, and that's totally fine. If they forward them to you and then you can just give them to me, I'd be more than happy to get back to you. Yeah.
Can I just ask one question whilst we are waiting, just to see if there are any others, about perhaps a joint degree programme combining subjects? Can you tell us a little bit about that in the context of the STEM subjects and maybe particularly in Loughborough?
Yeah, sure. So we do offer quite a lot of those kind of joint honour degrees, not just at Loughborough, but kind of around the sector as well. Something students need to watch out for is when they're looking for two subjects and there's an and. So, for example, it might be maths and physics. What that refers to is it's a 50-50 split. So half of your time will be on one subject, half of the time will be on the other. If you're applying for a degree and it uses the word with, so maths with physics, what that means is the majority of your time will be spent on the first subject mentioned, so the maths. The with part, it's almost like the American system. So it's like a major and a minor, where most of your time, maybe 2/3 to 3/4, will be on the first subject, so the maths in this example, and then a quarter, a third will be on the secondary subject, so less emphasis on it. I mean, I would say they're great in terms of if students want them. A lot of the time you'll find that the students that apply for them, it's because they're interested in both areas and they can't really make a choice. That's totally fine. You're still getting, if you're applying for a bachelor's degree in a single subject versus a joint honours subject, they're the same level. So it's not like you're getting a lower qualification or anything like that. Employers view it as the same. At the end of the day, you've still got a bachelor's degree, or if you go up to a master's and get a master's degree, again, it's still seen as the same in terms of the level. So there's no downside there really. As I say, yeah, we do have quite a lot of them at Loughborough. I mean, just off the top of my head, the maths example, I know we've got maths with physics, physics with theoretical physics, loads and loads to go through. I'd recommend, if people are wondering about that, best place to go to would be our website, and they can just search it, or the UCAS website, which lists every single course around the country for all universities on their website as well. So I think they are good. Definitely, there's nothing wrong with them. It's not like you're getting a lower degree. Typically, as I say, it's that situation where students are interested in both areas. They can't make a decision, and so they want to do both, and that's absolutely fine.
That's really helpful. Thank you very much indeed. And just to draw attention as well, students, to some of those sustainable degrees, and some of those that have come on looking at new technologies and green careers is something that we've been trying to focus on as well. So I think look at the full range of universities, and in this instance, as we say, we're encouraging you to look at Loughborough, but it's very important that, as Richard said, you look across the spectrum of university courses, but look at those as well. Just got a question through from a student. At uni there is a thing called blended learning. How would you apply for a certain ratio from learning on campus to at home learning? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. So unfortunately, I can't really give a cut and dry answer to that, because it's worked out on like each university will have their own policy around that. Typically, if you're applying for what's classed as a full-time undergraduate course, you're there full-time. So the university expects you to be physically, at the university for however many contact hours you have. In the STEM subjects, obviously that will be more contact hours, typically 30 hours a week plus, possibly, because you'll have not only lectures and seminars, but then the added kind of facet of experiments as well. So you'll be in the labs working with machines, you'll have that extra element to it. But then obviously there is some universities will have degrees that are part-time, but they will be set out beforehand for students. So if it won't be the situation where if you apply for a full-time undergraduate course, once you get there, you won't then be able to apply for a certain amount of percentage, 30% of your time you want to go from home. That's not really how it works. You need to, once you've picked a particular course and applied for it, as I say, they're all specifically laid out with the individual UCAS codes. So there will be a code for a full-time course, and there will be a code for a part-time course as well. Once you've made that decision and the university accepts you onto whatever it is you've applied for, you're kind of committed to that one. Once you arrive at university, you can't really chop and change and apply for extra things. You're applying with that understanding that this is what the commitment is.
And can I just ask, Richard, is there any part of the degree at Loughborough that's still delivered online as it was during COVID, or is the majority of it actually face-to-face?
So we're back face-to-face now completely. We do have some like resources that virtual resources available for students. So the vast majority of our lectures are recorded and uploaded to something called Review, which is like a student streaming service. Basically, it's just a Loughborough program, and they're all uploaded there, and so students can watch them back at a later time, that kind of thing. It might be the case where some seminars on maybe a one-on-one basis, I'm not sure. So say, for example, a lecturer is ill or a student is ill and they can log on to a physical seminar like online. I'm sure there's flexibility there, but generally all of those virtual things are seen as kind of add-on support. Exactly. They're backups. That mainly we're back 100% face-to-face now.
That's really encouraging as well, and I'm sure the student experience, if students are going to university, those are beneficial. But it is good that resources are also available online, such as our recording this evening that will be online. It's very handy to be able to do that, and I think we've all got a lot better at that sort of thing as well. But it is nice to know, and hopefully that answers the question. If there are no further questions, I'm going to kind of just finish by saying a huge thank you to Richard. I think that was an extremely comprehensive whistle-stop tour through the sort of the STEM subjects, but also some really interesting hints and tips, I think, for students looking at all aspects of STEM subjects and careers. We hope that some of the things that Faye has been putting in the chat as well will give students some links to go on and inquire, and there are many more that we'll be able to forward to them. This is a 2-year sort of pathway for year 12s and year 13s, so there'll be plenty of other opportunities coming along. And we hope to work alongside Loughborough and other contacts and partners to enlighten students about further aspects of STEM subjects as well. But it's really, really interesting to see that obviously Loughborough University is at the forefront, I know, of a lot of innovation, and also keeping those industrial placement years in mind for students, because it's something that Faye and I are great advocates of as well. And I think it's very important that students do look at those, because we know that employability is also very important following on from degrees, and we like to see that students are very much aware from work experience, from industrial placements, from time abroad perhaps as well, that actually applying these in a work setting is very key. So thank you very much indeed, Richard. We know that we'll keep in contact, and if any student has any further questions, then please email them to Faye or myself, or at careers@keds.ac.uk, and we'll forward those to Richard. So thank you very much indeed, Richard. Take good care all, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.